Mel, when you will have heard politicians say, look, we are in it for the right motive, so why do you still have such a bad feeling about them, that their reputation is so poor?
I don't have a totally bad feeling, but I think that there's not enough leadership coming from politicians. When we face things like Brexit, we're going to need more than political management. We're going to need people who can articulate a vision of what we should be in 15 or 20 years' time, who can answer the question, what sort of nation do we want to be in 20 years, and start mapping that backwards from there. Instead, we get politicians often who are concerned, or seemingly, only with the next 5-year election cycle. So I think we need to do better on leadership.
This is a very important discussion for many reasons. I think there are questions we haven't yet addressed. One of them is, what are our social mores on this? I don't personally advocate making suggestive remarks to anyone outside of my wife. A lot of people would agree with that, and obviously some don't. But we have to answer the question, when does provocative suggestion become harassment? When does harassment become assault? Especially physical harassment become assault? That's not a trite question. That needs to be addressed. We haven't really answered that yet. We might have in law, but we haven't in the public discourse. The second one is, are we happy with trial by social media? I think the fear of being subject to knee-jerk viral campaigns is leading in some cases to knee-jerk pseudo-apologies. And we've heard a few of them in the last few weeks. I don't remember the incident, but I'm sorry if my behaviour caused offence. That's not a real apology. It's an attempt to dampen down the sort of passion of the lynch mob, I think. And accusations, have to be made through proper channels. They have to be investigated and adjudged through the legal system.
So obviously this is very exciting and scary at the same time. Yes. My question would be, are African cities ready for this?
Well, I think they're as ready as anybody is, to be honest with you. I mean, it is a revolution. It is the fourth industrial revolution, and it will bring massive change. But we're talking about the death of old school factories in industry, for example. We're talking about small production units hooked up by the Internet of Things, machines that repair themselves with very little human involvement. And there are social implications with unemployment and so on, technology gaps with all of that. But it's on its way, so we need to be prepared.
If you're bringing technology and making these smart cities, surely that's going to need a lot more dollars to create.
Yes, it is. A lot of it will be driven by private enterprise, because smart technologies, being as portable and small as they are, with the prices dropping as they are today, are much more accessible to small business owners. So I think that's exciting for Africa in the sense that it might allow more entrepreneurs to get involved in industry. If you're talking about building a factory for a big production chain, that's expensive. But if you're building one unit within that entire chain, and it's separate from all the others, and they're hooked up by the Internet of Things, that is actually quite reasonable. So it might open doors as well for the young business owner. It's important to remember that our response to tragedies like this reveals a lot about our health as a society. One of the things I didn't like in the aftermath of Grenfell was the way it was politicised so quickly. I think there's just too much politics in this country sometimes. Everything's political. And we had, and it wasn't just Jeremy Corbyn, but we had him, I think, trying to score some points by talking about austerity measures the very day after this thing happened. And I didn't like that at all. Parties need to work together. One leader, in fact, of a university Marxist society said just a couple of weeks ago, despite the monstrosity of the Stalinist regime, and I'm quoting, we can see the power and strength of a planned economy. The question isn't whether there's planning behind an economy, but who does the planning. Arguably, if you look at history, communism serves vested interests as much as or more than capitalism. At least under capitalism, markets have the power to change things, and markets are driven by the tastes and behaviours of individuals. And for all this utopian rhetoric, Marxist governments anyway, quickly morph into introverted, self-serving cultures that look after the interests of their members, of their elite members. So I think what's happening here, if we're not careful, the path to Marxism will lead another generation of these passionate reformist young people that I love into disappointment and disillusionment, just as it did students of my age in the 1960s, especially 1968. I think there's a nervousness too with the politicians at the moment when it comes to this group of people within Parliament, a large group as I understand it, who say we need a second referendum. I think that's disingenuous. I don't think you can say, on one hand, we don't rule by plebiscite, we rule by elected officials, and then turn around the next minute and say we don't like the results, so let's have another referendum. I was asked recently at a business leaders thing in Berlin, what's the biggest challenge we face in our times if you could pick one? And I said, well, if it covers everything, it would have to be insecurity. We live in an age of ubiquitous fluidity, everything's changing, jobs are changing, politics is changing all the time, even gender identity is changing now. And I think President Trump in many ways personifies the insecurity people feel, and he also acts as a sort of a poultice for insecurity, brings out our insecurities when we'd probably rather he didn't. But there's also a lot of hyperbole in response. to President Trump, both in America and here. We had the ridiculous situation this week, I think, in America, where one of the US senators, a prominent member of the Senate, said that Trump's comments about media were Stalinesque. And I think that's just historical revisionism. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, you have to say he doesn't have any of the levers of power that would allow a Stalinesque figure to control the media. And I don't think that sort of hyperbole is helping. It's inflaming an already angst-ridden political atmosphere.
But I think he's perpetuating a myth that all people over a certain age are basically parasites who contribute little to society. They're off on Mediterranean cruises or whatever. And that's just not true. Many older people work part-time, often for reduced wages. They donate blocks of time to community engagement. And let's face it, a sizable number of people over 50 and in their 60s in Britain actually start new businesses, employing and training younger people. And when it comes to the vote, when it comes to politics, older people, including OAPs, I think, bring a huge store of wisdom and experience that can be invaluable. They bring a sense of perspective, a sense of calm in rapid change is important. They bring political and ethical insights born out of their experience. And when it comes to jobs, I think, look, digital tech today opens up all kinds of opportunities for young people for upskilling online, for collaboration online, for starting new businesses. So many young people I meet are starting their own businesses and social enterprises, all because of the opportunities of technology.
People with online public profiles that include a photo apparently are more attracted to visible opportunities to give to causes, but they actually give smaller amounts. So they talk more about it, but they give less. Okay. And I think this is another interesting reminder to me of the need for discipline with our online engagement, because another story earlier this week talked about the fact that lies travel 6 times faster on Twitter than the truth. This was a big study done by none less than MIT in the United States. It also said a lie is apparently 70% more likely to be shared on social media than truth. And so all of this comes down to this area. Are we going to engage how we do things online? Is it shaping who we are, or are we shaping it? Do we rely on governments too much to correct these social media platforms, or are we willing to call out those who are, for example, lying online or telling fake stories online? So it raises a whole bunch of interesting questions and a debate we need to have. For most of his tenure as Prime Minister and then President, Mugabe made the 3 mistakes, I think, that a lot of African tyrants make. Number 1, conflating the interests of the leader with the nation. Believing that the leader alone has the wisdom, the cunning, the foresight to protect the nation and lead it to better places. And the third one, as very true of Zimbabwe, adopting what we might call the status communist philosophy of the 40s and 50s, which said that the leader's top goal has to be maintaining control of all the major institutions. That's what a leader has to spend their time on, just keeping control. So power becomes an end in itself. And all of that, I think, was exacerbated in Zimbabwe's case because there's a strong strain of patience and tolerance running through their culture. They're lovely people. And whilst that's a great virtue, it's been exploited here by Mugabe over the years. And I think in the end, everything we need to know about this story is found in the comparison of the legacies of Mandela and his one-time contemporary freedom fighter, Mugabe.
I'm Mal Fletcher. I've lived in the UK for 13 years. I'm a proud British citizen. I voted Remain with reservations. The people have spoken. This wasn't an opinion poll. It's a vote. It's a command to Parliament. So, hey, I'm on board.
People need to feel that they have control of their own culture and destiny. I think we need to feel that we are making laws in this country that we can, if we don't like the law, we can evict the lawmaker. And I think migration, again, management of migration to provide the best resource to bring people into. I think those are the things that matter most. I think a second referendum is totally unnecessary, and the people gave Parliament an instruction. Yes. It wasn't an opinion. And so Parliament needs to get on, and it's not up to former Prime Ministers to tell us as the British people that we were too intellectually lightweight to understand what we were doing.
Absolutely.
And that we should now have to rethink it because we've been led into a fool's paradise. I just don't hold that.